good local time. It's your boy Wisp here, and I'm having another go at recording this because the last recording, which I thought I did so perfectly, had no sound to it. So here we are. I've made sure that it's all good, and what I'm here to do is introduce my tool that I've created. It's called Nifty Snaps, and this tool is a tool that I now use to streamline my asset creation for snappable assets to bring inside of worlds such as Nifty Island. If you haven't heard of Nifty Island, it's a Web3 game. It's on the blockchain, and basically people can create their own worlds inside of the game and host events, play with friends, all that kind of stuff. In this folder, the textures I'm using, the reason that I'm using these textures is because it will be familiar to those people who have been on my islands, because I created a very large build set, 250 items all up, that all snap together perfectly, and I called it the Bloom Cathedral. So these are the textures that were used on the Bloom Cathedral, and this is just a very rudimentary and simple example of how things might snap together later in game. Of course, later down the track, you're going to get better at making accents and making window like panes and edges and doors and all that kind of stuff. But the tool that I'm trying to show you doesn't focus on that. It's just going to show you basically how to do this kind of stuff really quick, and all of this will be included in a Blender file. And so I've got to go ahead right now and say that this is completely non-affiliated to Nifty Island. This is a solo project that I undertook because I was spending a lot of time creating assets, and I still am. However, this has saved me a lot of time, so I will be adding a downloadable link to my Google Drive, which will have a zip folder inside of it. Inside of that zip folder will have this blend file, and it will also have the add-on that you'll be able to install. So it's all up to you. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'll explain how to install it, and I'll explain how to find the file, and then we can move on from there. So basically, when I press N, I've got this little add-on here called Nifty Snaps. You won't have it when you first install Blender. I'm going to act as if everyone is a noob right now. So you've installed Blender. Blender is an open source free software to use, right? You won't have this. So let's go ahead and install it. You've downloaded my file from my Google Drive, and what we can do is we can go Edit, Preferences, and there's a little drop down here. Click on Install from disk, and then you find my file. In this case, it's this niftysnaps.zip. Install from disk. When you do that, it's going to pop up here automatically. However, I'm just going to type it in just so you can see. It'll look like that. If you get an error message, let me know, please. However, it should just install perfectly. Just so you know, I am running Blender 4.5.3. However, this works back to like 3.5, so it should be good. If it's not, please let me know, and I'll try to do my best to accommodate for that. This should be ticked, and then when you press N, you should get this window, and I'll explain this window in a second. However, before we do that, there's another thing you need to do. Inside of the, sorry, let me go back. Here's your zip folder. If you use whatever program you use, in my case I'm going to use WinRAR, I'm going to extract it. When you do extract it, it's got all your things in here. It's got the textures that I've used, that I've saved here just for the file. It's got the license here, which pretty much just says this is open for anyone to use. You can do whatever you want with this, by the way, but yeah, just go hard if you really want. And it's got the starter blend, a readme that just explains what it is, and the starter blend. So you double click that, you're going to end up seeing this. And in here, before we go to explain the add-on, let me just press space because something's playing. Before we go to the add-on, I'm going to show you what's in here. So in here is very helpful little thing that I put together. I wasn't the person who made these images. However, I found these images and put them in here because these shortcuts, doesn't matter if you're a pro or a noob, these things are so important. Also, these are the add-ons, free add-ons that I use. In this case, one very important add-on is this Blender Kit Online Asset Library, and that is where I have got, that's this bar up here, and if I press visible, basically you can and you can also sort by free. You can grab textures from all over the place from different creators, and if it's free, I mean, you can check the licenses if you want, but these are all free to use. So in this case, I've already grabbed some textures, but if you wanted, you could grab one off there and you could drag and drop it, and then it would be there. Now, just to be aware, what I've done is I've made the perfect UV mapping for these things. So if you do drag and drop a texture, it's super important to come over here into the data over here on the right and delete this auto map, because I've already made a UV map for everything, right? And then it will display properly. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z out of that because we want back to our original texture. There it is. And I'm going to soon explain this. However, first I'll say straight up, here's some challenges. These will make things interesting, so read over them, do your best to overcome them. They're very simple things, however I think they're really important for people learning how to do this stuff. So before we go into the add-on, what I'll say is it's taken me hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years. I've been building in Nifty Island for a long time now, and often my friends in the community will say I'm a noob because I'm not there playing, because I've spent so much time in the background trying to get these things perfect. And so the reason I created this is so to try and save you time, and also to convince you that you're able to do this and you don't have to go through the hard yards because someone else has done them for you. So all of these assets here, and this is just the simple the zip that I've given you. However, there are I'm thinking of releasing more complex shapes, and I may put them out there for a very small price. However, these shapes have been UV unwrapped perfectly. They're all ready for you basically to add a texture and export. However, the reason that I made this thing is, one, because exporting takes a long time when you do file by object, and two, we need to create a snap system that allows you to in game join these things together seamlessly so that you can't see the edge of the shape, right? So that's what this tool is about. It also has a whole lot of handy stuff in there, and we're going to get into it straight away. So this tool, creation settings, I'm going to just bring it down a bit. So creation settings is very important, and you don't actually need to mess with this at all, but so the main thing we're doing here is creating snaps, right? And these creation settings are aligned to when we create snaps. So without going too complicated, basically when we do create snaps, we have these options here. We could change the display size, we could deselect snap points after creating or not, or we can select source objects after creating. So now when we do it, you can see that nothing is selected, but I like to have these on so that when I create snaps, it deselects the snaps, but it keeps the object selected. So you don't need to mess with this, it's just there for later on. Asset library, very fun. Basically you can create your entire library inside of this library. See how I've got, let me shift A. If you're struggling to follow keys, there they are there. I'll just move that up better. So you can create asset libraries and it will show up in here. In this case, we've got basic shapes, and then inside of basic shapes, and basic shapes is inside of the resources. But you can, anything you make, it'll turn up here, and you can go into there and you can choose from those shapes. So later on this might be really helpful for you. You might go like, I want to put a wall into scene, and then you go add library asset, and it will always put it at your cursor, right? So you could go stairs block, add asset, and then there's your block for the stairs, right? So super helpful. In this case, let's have a little look at this. In game in Nifty Island, we've got things called 2D slots, which is where you kind of like hang up your NFTs or a picture that you have. See this little origin point. If I click 2D slot, what it's going to do is it's going to add an object in there, and it's going to name it correctly, is very important. See, Nifty slot /2D dash 2D, sorry. And and yeah, basically what that means is when you upload that to game, that could have like a stained glass window, for example, like what I've done, or it could house one of your NFTs, so you can use this to make picture frames. It's just a little shortcut that I made, so let's delete that. You can also add a 3D slot. Hold on. So like you select your, let's say this has cursor selected, object set origin to 3D cursor. So let's say you don't need to do that, this is just for the show. Let's say I add 3D slot. See this little cube here? Grab that up. That is where you can drop 3D items, and then you can tell them to spin around. So maybe you make a pedestal or something like that, or like a glass tube, and inside that glass tube you drop this little cube, and then when you're in game you can drop a 3D object in there and you can make it spin, right? So it's super fun. That's the 3D slot thing there. So asset library, all good. Assign materials, pretty straightforward as well. You have an asset library or a material library, and this is going to look from inside of resources. I have material slots, so you couldn't order this how you want, but it's looking for this at the moment. So you can add, see these 4 things here? I've got, those are the 4 objects there. So you could make a whole lot. You could have like 20 different objects here, all with different materials, and as long as they're under material slots, it's gonna have this, they're gonna show up in here. So what I can do is I could like, let's say I want all of the walls on here to be a brick. I can go bricks, bam, and it's a brick. And I know that doesn't look super great right now, but that's just the basic. Remember, that's the base formula. Later on you're going to add the accents and add some, like, make it look proper, right? But that's what the materials is for. It's super helpful. Texture resize, very, very helpful and super important. Basically every single item has its texture. In this case I've already shrunk them, and the reason you want to make sure that they're low file size is because in game, if you have a whole lot of objects and they're super high in file size, then you're just going to create really, really bad load times, and you're just going to have a whole lot of problems. So what I've done is I've already shrank them. How it shrunk. If you hadn't, you might look in here when you click on the new material that you've dragged in from, you know, from this thing or anywhere else that you might get a material, and you click on the object that you've dragged it to, and you might see, oh wow, it equals like 5 megabytes. Well, you probably don't want a small wall, just this one wall being 5 megabytes, right? You might want it around 1 megabyte, maybe. Up to you. You can even reduce it further. So what you can do is you can use this to resize your things. So in this case, what I've done is I've selected 512, and I select the ones that I want to, and I can go resize selected. And what that will do is wherever you have this file saved, and I recommend that you actually save this file or this the Blender file in a place that you know where it is, because wherever you have that saved, when you resize these, it's going to create a folder called 512 and put them in. And you can also, and I recommend also that you only resize down, and that once you've got down, you do not resize up, because that might just start messing with things, right? However, I don't know how good Blender's actual resize how it works truly, but just try not to resize it too much. Choose your size, get it down to size, make it good, and then you're all good to go. Object origin, super straightforward. Basically, that little orange dot is where your mouse is inside of Nifty Island, sorry. So like, let's say that the object, let's say that we wanted, when we were holding it, we wanted the the object origin to be at the bottom. So when you're holding it with your mouse, the whole square is above you. It's like you're holding it here. Or what if you wanted it so that when you're placing it in game, you wanted it kind of to be in the middle? Well, you can use this tool to change the object origin. So in my case, I like it to be center most times, but it could be different for you. If you want, you could like select something. So you could select like a single vertice and go to selected, and that would set the object origin there. However, that's super unhelpful. So you have all these tools. You can change it to top, to the bottom, to left, to right, and in this case we want it center. There you go. Very helpful, save you a bunch of clicks. Create snaps. Now this is the main tool. In order to be able to snap all your things together, see these things here? They need to be created on the perfect points, all geometrically perfect, and then they need to be named. If you, basically they're named. Let me get out of this. There it is. See, Nifty Snap. So I used to have to like click this, select a thing, control cursor to selector, out, axes, and then F2, Nifty Snap. And that's how I made each one individually. With this tool, basically you can select all of these bad boys, tab into edit mode, and you can see that I've already, if you haven't messed with the file, I've already selected all these these edges, and that's where you're going to be creating them on these points here, if you want to, right? If you're selecting for yourself, you can just you can hold Alt and make sure you have the edge select tool, and you just Alt and click, and it will select the whole loop. However, we've already done that, so what we're going to do is we're going to come over to create snaps. So we're going to go create on vertices, and look at that, you just created a bunch, 102 snaps. So see how long it took me to make that one. Not only has it created them, but it's also named them. So in this folder here, Nifty Snaps, you have all of the snaps that have, all of the folders that have just been created, and they're named after the object. And so object naming is super important for the export tool. So base and the snaps. So right now, this snap is sitting in a folder that is sitting underneath a name that relates directly to this. So before adding these snaps to anything, you want to make sure that your object is named exactly how you want it to be, because if you go to export it later and you've changed the name later on, then it's not going to pull these snaps. You're going to have to make them again, which isn't that hard now that you've got the tool, but it's just super easy to get it named first and have a tidy workstation. Let's say you wanted the snaps to not be on those bits. You can do it. You can select a face and do it on a face. It could be in the middle there, or wherever you want. And just so you understand snaps properly, basically, this, like when in game, when I drag this, like if I'm holding this little square, and you won't have to select these in game, but you'll only see this, and you drag it inside a game, and it'll snap perfectly to where those other snaps are. So you can make a lot of geometry. So that's what this is all about. This is the main reason I've called it Nifty Snaps, is because it's super powerful. A couple of tools inside of this. Basically, let's say that you've made another object and you want, and these snaps that you've already created, you want to assign this. You probably will never use this, to be honest, because you can just make new ones, but you can select the snaps you want to assign, shift to select the object, and go assign snaps to active, and it will switch them, and it'll put them around perfectly around its origin point, and it will also change the name inside of here to relate to the new object, right? Deselect snap points does exactly what it says. Deselect snap points, and we're good. Cleanup is really important. So let's say we have an object and we put the snaps in all the wrong places. We can go delete selected object snaps. Super helpful. What if we have snaps that are left over after a whole lot of stuff, and we don't want to go and delete them one by one, blah blah blah. It's like hard. What if it's a really complicated thing and you're accidentally trying to select them all and you get things? Well, you can just don't even select them. Delete empty snaps and collections, and that will clean up your collection and the snaps that are sitting around. But I'm going to Control Z because I want to go back to where we had those things. Another thing is size. Sometimes you lose track of them or something. You can just change the size and resize. However, I think this is the perfect size. So I'm going to go back to what. There we go. And now we come to the real fun magic. Okay, so this used to take so long. I'll give you an example. Usually you'd go cursor to world origin, you'd select the ones you want to export, selection to cursor, file, export, GLB, include selected objects, and then you'd name it what you want to name it, right? But no, now we can just go like this, batch export as GLB. We don't have to change the name. We just come, we make a test export. I've already done it here, but we're going to use it anyway just as an example. No, we'll make a new one. Oops. New folder. Testy test. Let's go. You select that folder and do not change the name. It's going to fetch all of the names of the objects that you've created. It's going to take all the snaps and it's going to export them. Done. In one little click. You do not know how much this has changed my life for, like I can export hundreds of things at a time if they're ready. Little thing to look here, I would go and show you the folder, however I know that it's worked. It will give you a little message down here saying, hey, this is how many we've exported. You've got a couple of things here, so hide after export, you don't have to do that. That just hides the objects and their snaps after export. I like that because it shows me my progress in the file, because often I'm dealing with a whole lot, right? You can also do include nearby meshes. So let's say that you had a mesh, let's just say, I'm just doing this for show. Let's say that there was a whole lot of complicated stuff going on and you wanted them all to join and get exported together, but you could only click one, just whatever. You can go include nearby meshes and do the same thing, and it will export both of them together in one file. Does that make sense? You probably won't need that. It's there for my complicated self, and it might be helpful later on. So that is Nifty Snaps. I hope you like it. This is as I said before, this has been absolutely transformative. It took me about 2-3 months to vibe code this with ChatGPT, and it's only going to grow from here. Later on, I will put this in a GitHub repository and make it available and push updates for it, etc. There's a couple of other things that are fun in this file. One is, you see this little thing here, I've created an object with a boolean, so basically you can cut it. You see how this is a solid object, and I want it to be a doorway. Well, you can cut it using this. If you click over here and you click this wall, you can see I've added a modifier. To do this, you can just literally go add modifier, type in boo, and there's boolean. However, I've set it up for you already, and what I've done is you click this little dropper and you select the one that you want to cut with, and now you can see that if I apply it, now you have an object that is cut to the shape that you used as the boolean cut, right? So for example, we want this to be, let's say we want something a little bit more complicated. We could apply, and now we have a cut door. So use this to make fun shapes. You know, it's just a little thing on the side that I wanted to show you, and that is up here. Use boolean to create a new shape. I recommend you go through these challenges, have a proper read over this, and really try and get all these things. Make something creative. There's so many more shapes. I'm just giving you the most simple set. All of these things are going to be included in the file. I'd love to see what you do with them. I'm personally moving away from PBRs a little bit and trying to get into custom textures, and that is so easy and possible now with all the AI tools and things like that. But basically you can like take a photo of a velvet, for example, and then tile it, and you can use it in exactly the same way as you've used here, or a curtain or gravel or something like that. So have fun, make your own textures. It's actually not that hard. Apply them to these things, export them, upload them to Nifty Island or even another game, and show me what you do. I want to see it. And yeah, I'm just so stoked to be able to create this tool, and I know there's a bunch of people out there that are already doing this kind of stuff, and they're going to be super stoked to have this, and I hope you are too. Again, the file will be available through, I'll probably put it underneath this video. If for some reason it changes in the future, you can just feel free to contact me. You can find me, Wisp, on Nifty Island, or Sigil Wisp on Instagram, things like that. Yeah, and I think that's it. So yeah, happy creating GLT, and yeah, let me know how it goes. If there's any bugs or anything like that, or anything you want to change, or maybe there's a tool you're like, ooh, it'd be so cool if this existed in there as well to help me build. Please reach out and tell me about it. See you on the island, family. See you on the island. Let's go, GLT.